Yeah. How do you make that There's one that's been in
All right. So today marks the beginning of. Supposed to have a guest speaker, but it's okay. I guess I'm your guest speaker today. So next Wednesday, you will be having somebody else different up here, and the subject is pretty much parables. What I will be doing today, I was supposed to pick some, but I figured I'll just introduce the whole subject of parables, and then I guess you can hear the rest from our guest speakers. So this will be through the end of July. And then Sundays will be with me. Gary managed to get coached. It was supposed to be Gary and myself, but I'll be taking care of you guys for Sundays. And July, just a reminder, guys. Okay, awesome. So this. I don't think I
We don't have a topic yet, though. So we don't have a topic yet, though, so open to suggestions.
Actually, how do we write it? For Sundays, logic has been mentioned. Maybe I should just leave that on to Gary whenever he gets around. But if you're interested in logic, I can dabble in that. I can't say I'm the best at logic, but I can certainly give you a bite. And then I'll let somebody else give you the rest of the bite. And either that or I'm interested in doing Matthew 24. Those are the subjects I have for you for Sunday. If anybody's interested in any other subject, please let me know between now and Sunday, I guess, which is not far away. Any other subject? You guys remember anything about the logic class? It was loosely defined as, was it how to think? Yes. I can hear myself echoing. Echoing. All right. So does anybody know, or can anybody give me the definition, or just the loose definition, what you know or think about parables? What is a parable?
earthly story that has every meaning?
Awesome stories. That is the very first thing I hit upon, looking for those definitions. And then it went certain other levels. I don't want to go to all those levels. I think of it, yes, that's the definition. I like to also think of it, it's used a lot for illustrative purposes. But sometimes it's also the main lesson, though it's still illustrative. So oftentimes, whenever you see a parable, the method of identifying one, which is often Jesus telling these parables, there's at least two others which are not told by Jesus. I don't think anybody else in the New Testament tells a parable. Let me know if there's anybody. I can only think of Jesus who told parables. I can't think of anybody else. Anyway, to identify a parable, it usually starts with, for example, I was going to do Matthew chapter 13. If you go to verse 24, it'll be something like, the kingdom of heaven is like, and these are the kingdom parables. So it's pretty easy. All of them start like that. Besides the one for the sower, the kingdom of heaven is like. That's verse 31. Verse 33, the kingdom of heaven is like. I think you get my point. But there is comparison. He's comparing something to another. And that's how he often goes into those parables. The other method, which if you look at the parable of the sower, it's so the technical word for that. Okay, I won't use the technicalities. That's why I wanted the board. So the other ones is he would use a metaphor. I think everybody's familiar with what a metaphor is, but just in case, somebody please throw out a definition of what metaphor is. And I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right. Metaphor, however.
You want Gemini's version?
Yes, sir.
A figure of speech that directly compares two unrelated things by stating that one thing is another.
So when you look at the parable of the sower, verses 3 through 9, would you consider that metaphorical?
Can you read it?
Behold, actually, tend to give the long readings to people. Behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on the stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Okay, metaphor or no?
Yes.
Should I ask how?
Well, he's not specifically talking about the seed that's going on. He goes on to explain what he's talking about is people, souls to be saved or attempt to be saved. And so he's comparing the seed with people and how different reactions that you may get.
Thank you, sir. So now you have, those are ways you can identify a parable. Now, in my view, to us modern individuals, I think the impact of parables doesn't hit as hard as it should. Why do you think that may be?
We don't associate with those parables so much.
Sure, I'll take that one.
We're not so.
Nobody sold.
So?
Not for yourself.
I just,
I think it comes across as a story, right?
Yes.
Um,
That one's
whereas
really-
it's not a direct command.
And there's also that, as you read it, it's kind of like, I compared it to, when people are watching like a favorite movie, oh, what happens next? What happens next? You really want to know, With these, you kind of already have the answer. Somebody's already told you, okay, parable of the sower. You already know what that's about, right? And that one, especially with people who criticize the Bible, they just consider it story. It's just a story. Maybe you've heard them as a bedtime story. I don't know. Are the parents who do that? Anyway, but pretty much whenever Jesus, for the people who were there listening, it was, until he brought them to the point that he's trying to get across to them. One thing I saw said that Jews, what race of people were they? Were they? I guess I'll just call them, were they Eastern? Anyway, whatever race of people they were, it said that they liked riddles, that kind of stuff. Or you consider your it's like I can't be charged as being racist, can I?
Anyway.
But yeah, consider your Solomon, or your book of Proverbs, your Psalms. I mean, it's all over the Bible. They like that kind of stuff. So if you start talking this way to that person, you pretty much would catch his or her attention. And you'd be able to make that point, and it would have more impact than what we. Is there any way we can present parables in such a way to make it have more impact on the individual? What would be something to you that would make a difference?
I mean, we use illustrations, but we kind of make a point and then illustrate it versus giving the illustration and then making a point, if that makes sense. Like, that's kind of our habit way of doing things.
Different method of delivery.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just kind of have to be like Samuel and just come out and be like, that's you. I mean, like in the case with David, and he took the lamb, and David was like, huh? What are you talking about? That's what we are. Like, we can't self-reflect. So sometimes we might need to be straightforward and be like, hey, that's you, bro.
We love stories, but we're very entertainment driven.
Yeah.
So we're not inclined to be looking for the philosophical meaning in stories. We're just, oh, that was fun, or oh, that was entertaining.
Your favorite book? There's a joke there, but I won't make it.
Carry the branches, right, from the tree and throw them in the lake of fire. And we can visualize that. Hey, that's entertaining.
It tends to not make.
Well, if you get to roast marshmallows over that fire.
Sure.
Yeah, because think lake of fire may not make much sense. So a lot of what he would do with parables was things which were common to the people. They could easily identify as, oh, I don't know about lake of fire. Would you argue maybe, is there a way to, we just spoke about deliver. My example would be, I don't know who was with me at camp last week. Whose week was that? Okay. So there was a young man who was telling a joke about a tractor. I unfortunately cannot remember the whole joke. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's one of the best parts.
I don't know if I can do it like he did.
Tractor truck? I mean, come
Who
on.
do I know who was there? Something about a farmer and his tractor. Anyway, so so that dude told that joke 3 nights in a row. Right? 3 nights in a row. By the second night, I was kind of like, it's okay.
Wait, you heard it 3 times? Did you
Must have been a bad joke.
Yeah. I'll claim that old man brain. So I'm not that old yet, but I'm getting there. But on the 3rd night, he delivered it different than at the other times. And I dare say, as far as I was concerned, the third time he told that joke, it had more impact, simply because he delivered it a different way than the other times he did. So I don't know. I think there's something to be said about delivery. Yeah, that's an interesting one. We tend to give the point before the illustration. But yeah, something can be said about the way things are delivered. With delivery, some people like to, break down the little bits of the parable to make it more. I mentioned Jesus used common things. For example, there's one about the woman who was trying to find her 10 coins. What coins? Why is she trying to find these coins? What's the significance? Okay, I get the point, but to somebody of that day, those coins would have had some significance, which my study of that said that those were given to her in marriage, so it was kind of like your wedding band type thing. So if you lose it, you would be looking, I don't know about people nowadays, you just go buy another one. But if it was that important, she lost one coin. So she went and looked for that thing until she found it. All right. But what Jesus was able to do with these things is to find that connection, find the connection with the people. And I think oftentimes in public presentation, it's not the easiest thing to do, but at the same time, it's also a slippery slope. So some people can find that sweet spot, and then maybe they take it too far. But yeah, so Jesus was able to find that connection, and I think in breaking it down so that you and I can easily digest it makes it so that we're able to also connect. Kind of like we are in the crowd when Jesus tells that story. There are a number of parables in the New Testament. There are two which I have a bunch of names. London, yes, you mentioned one. 2 Samuel 12, verses 1 through 4, Nathan's parable to David. And see, what I found interesting about that is whenever we think parables, you're not going to think Old Testament. There's at least two in the Old Testament. There's that one and the one in Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. This one's the parable of God's vineyard, which he was talking about Israel, obviously. If you're interested, somebody read Isaiah 5, verses 1 through 6, please.
Let me sing for my beloved song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and he cleared it of stones, and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it, and he hewed out a wine vat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. Now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned nor hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And if you are at that section of text, verse 7 immediately begins to explain to you what that's all talking about. And that's another feature of Jesus' parables. He would just drop that, then move on. He did not immediately give that meaning, but he always was trying to make a point. So maybe remember that bit I mentioned about these people liked a little bit of a mental challenge. So if somebody heard that, he or she might be carrying that thing around for the next week or until whenever, if they ever do figure it out. Looking at this is Matthew 13. Okay, verse 36. The disciples immediately asked Jesus, explain to us the parable of the tares of the field. So he would give these parables without the meaning. The people were supposed to get to that answer, but they were supposed to do some lifting on their end. Do you think there's a difference? Have you ever had that one thing you're trying to figure out? Is there a difference when you figure it out yourself versus if I just throw it at you? No? Yes? And I think that's a technique to teaching, getting a person to an answer instead of giving that person the answer. I think that has more impact than if I just drop it in your lap. And you're free to dispute that. Another main point of parables, which this one you can also dispute. In my view, a parable is usually trying to make a point. It's trying to get you to a certain answer. Now, in our modern use of them, we often pull out certain other lessons from them. There's nothing wrong with that. But usually a parable has a certain point it's trying to get you to. Any comments on that? Inviting the pain.
I've always kind of understood Jesus' parables as kind of a double meaning in that every time that he's telling these parables, or most of the time, the disciples are asking, why are you always talking in parables? And like the end of the sower, it says the same thing where they literally ask him, why are you always talking in parables? And his answer to them is because the world is not ready to hear, but those who are ready to hear will hear and understand. And so he's making a point without blatantly saying things so that the ones who are understanding will understand the point, but without directly saying it. So almost as if to hold back some of the information. Just like he says, my time has not yet come when he's at the wedding feast. Things are being given and revealed in pieces as time goes on, and he's not ready to fully show his hand, rather.
Which, that was my next question, actually.
Or even at least ask. Like
Yeah.
if they didn't know, they'd at least ask him, what did you mean by that?
And then he's explained it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when he says it blatantly in public, it's always this story that is, if you understand what he's saying, then you understood the meaning, but if you don't, then you're just like, well, that's a good story, like you were saying about the entertainment thing. And I think that's very much on purpose.
That's actually, I think it's a very important point. Somebody would get Matthew 13 verses 11 through 13 to that point.
And the answer then to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they not understand.
So this is often one of the questions that's thrown out, and Austin just answered it there, in that Jesus would, and I put it in quotes, conceal Maybe the larger question might be how is he when he's telling it to you concealing it, and does it remain concealed? It's been answered, but I'll just ask it anyway. If it's a truth he's trying to share, he's trying to get them to see a spiritual truth, why hide it? Or how is he hiding it?
Well, because something you seek after or look for, you treasure more. Maybe.
It's pretty much in what Austin said and in the action of the disciples here. If there is something that these people did not understand, they would go and look for the answer. In this case, these guys went to the source. They straight up went and asked Jesus, you tell them these parables, what does this mean? In my estimation, or at least as far as I've seen in the Bible, I've not seen where somebody asked him a direct question like that and he would not give an answer. He was always willing to give that answer. And why I said it's an important point, it's good to have that inquisitive mind. If there's something that I just heard yesterday or whatever and I did not understand it, do some heavy lifting and then you'll get that reward when you finally figure it out. So I think it's a good way, or it's a good example of a way that we are to be as Christians, to have that inquisitiveness. It's not bad to ask questions. Some people may get upset, but it's not bad to ask questions. You ask a question I can answer, would you like Alan? Huh? That's a good question. One thing I found interesting as well with how many parables there are, just how it's like Jesus just came up with these things just spur of the moment like that. Like that's not the easiest thing to do. It's not easy to do that. He's been called the master teacher, of course, but to me it comes across as he was very observant. So he watched the people, which signifies to me also he took an interest in people's lives. And he was that interested to get them to be more invested in their own lives and in their own spiritual lives. And he, of course, was also invested in the people. Now, I don't know if there's any one parable you've never heard. I guess you cannot answer a question you'll not be able to know the answer to. The question was going to be, because I've heard some people say they can, for example, if we're going to read the parable of the sower, he can read it like he's reading it for the first time. That's also not an easy thing to do. But the question was going to be, would you be able to maybe have a different kind of reaction now that we've talked about all of this? And then if you were to look at a parable like the parable of the sower, like it's for the first time you're reading it, do you think it would have a different impact on you? Would it have a different outcome for you?
I think now all things have been revealed to us, and like we're reading a book that immediately has the answer directly after it, that explains what the parable is about in every single parable that I can think of. And so I don't think it's necessary for us
To go that far.
to have the thought process of, well, what did that mean? I don't really know. I don't think that's necessarily for our sakes. Again, I'll go back to, I think that the reason he was using parables was to not show his full hand at the time. But now all things are finished and revealed. And so it's fine for us to know the end of the parable and what it meant, because now that has more meaning for us as followers of Christ than it would just hearing about some seed that fell on rocky ground.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the modern mind, I don't know how much, you would have to update all of that, if you're talking about seed that fell on the wayside, like, huh? Like London mentioned earlier, it's not something that would hook the mind. I don't think anybody picked the ones in chapter 13, the bell just went. These ones are generally called the kingdom parables about the kingdom. Why the kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is like. It's talking about the kingdom of heaven. Question would be, what is the kingdom of heaven? I think that should be something we are familiar with. If you're not, then your homework. Inquisitive. Be inquisitive. But yeah, these ones talk about the kingdom. I don't think we need to go into that. Yeah, any questions or comments? Then we can be done.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
The question might be lost on you so much, but others may be able to answer it in this class. Like, do you think, as Southerners, we understand parables better because we use them all the time in our lives? Like, that dog won't hunt, or I'm having a wet hen, or do we use them because as Southerners we're more Christian, so we're used to reading the parables, and is it more of a
More Christian.
Oh,
boy, on the Bible Belt, right?
yeah, I would class some of those as proverbs, maybe. But what's interesting, maybe, about, even though the South is a Bible Belt, the parables are so well known that even somebody who's in New York,
Sure.
so
We use them all the time. I mean,
which is good. It's good. I think that also shows that understanding, right? So
Yeah.
you're able to apply that stuff. So
That's a simile.
they all won't hunt.
I've never said that in my life.
That's a great one. He could use it.
Just like so, now.
Mile, cheap hugs.
You need to work on the farm one day.
Matter in the way
Pick up
you
on something.
use that one.
Yeah, you look like a farmer.
He's class president.
we just nominate.
Yeah.
Gary's working on the phone today.
What's some other one? I keep thinking of it.
Oh, come on, you talking parables all the time?
Wait, I mean, we say them all the time.
That would fall far from the tree.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
You won't go to other
Oh, we're sitting in high cotton.
Man,
What about cotton?
So what are some of your countries?
Yeah, African metal.
Oh, I knew a few, but oof.
Knee high and grasshopper.
Been here too long.
Like legit. Last time I went, yeah, certain phrases and stuff are lost to me now.
Yeah.
That lion don't run.
Oh,
Strong like a lion.
Oh,
Hello,